guys just go do something, not move again, that's what they're doing. They have no other base. As a matter of fact, they can't do anything other than that. On the great Masters, like Glenn Hart in your area, we have to win first place in our championship here, right on that floor out. You know that. The guy with black uniform, the stripes on the tigers on the back, 3 or 4 tigers on the arm like this, it looks like a peacock. All that heading to that, like a peacock. It's not quite the same thing. So anyway, the way this thing works in martial arts for us is that we don't want to be involved in it. We really don't. And on the other hand, we're not with the Wushu. This group that we are, is the largest group in the world. Kwanmukan, I'm pleased with the interview. Come to the church or that church, which my correct terminology is called Kwanmukan. The other branch is called Kwanmukan. This group here has 60,000 black belts. Kwanmukan has 60,000 black belts. You want to look at Kwanmukan? That's the Kwanmukan version. That's all Kwanmukan. The rest of everybody else. The Korea runs everything. The whole Taekwondo movement is Kwanmukan. Practically everybody. Korea, you have the Shudokan. You have the Hanmukan, which is the Rinpoche, which is the World Federation. And then you have the Shikoru, which is called Q. You have no Goju or nothing of that kind. But this Goju person was our very, very, very good personal friend of mentor and short next show. It was the nice story of treasure of Japan and the Oyama Institute in all the Russian and Christian. So, what I learned to do, I have not fully completed because the publication is not complete. I have literally another 1,000 pages written on it. This stuff here today, I gave you the Conceptual Framework. I gave you the argument for the first reality. I gave you the argument for the I gave you the Volume 1, 2, 3, related notes in the concept. I gave you the argument for the jujitsu and the interdisciplinary methods. Which I didn't go over. Teachers in the church were very easy to show. I gave you a license. None of you did it well. Really a really deep history of North Carolina church Sunday. That in this, I expand the quantum techniques. I do argument for the quantum techniques. I do expand techniques together on all of them, once we're in first Quantum, and they're ready for insertion into the quantum forms. And this, the whole point of this is it's going to be in a talk over tape. If I don't have a talk over tape within more than 30 days, you can plug it into your car, drive on the street, listen to the talk about it. Then it's available on CD with the, I think we hope to have it on CD where you can up and you can see a continued action. Like you see a guy standing here and you see he's going to show you the next action. So if you're looking at the thing on the video, you can actually go from one action to the next. Short clips, not big clips. We already have that separate from going in here. It's already been done. And we hope to have an interactive video. This bandwidth is faster than having an interactive video on the web. We can open it up and go from one action to the next. You can see, if you get to here, what you do to get to this one, you can actually look at that thing and see what it is. Like a chart. You can click on the chart, open up and give that action one before, things like this. That's already done. Now, doing this is an enormous expense. You couldn't even begin it. I estimate right now we have $150,000 on this one. We have three big computer centers running, and this is enormous. The upshot for you teachers is that somebody asked me yesterday why we weren't doing this whole thing in one unit. What's the idea? Why couldn't we just teach it one interdiscipline? And the answer is real We really market. And each one has a unique characteristic. And each one has a unique marketable capacity. For the Tai Chi, the marketable Jiu-Jitsu is marketable as a self-defense, another type of Koku is marketable as a police, another kind of area. And then the karate itself is marketable characteristics. And the problem for us is we're at a university, we tend to yield to somebody else's kind of thing. It's nice to be able to, for example, we teach down at Walsh. He teaches karate. It would be nice for him to be able to give a Tai Chi instructor a different person, but from his own organization. First you taught him, right? You start a jiu-jitsu class, you wouldn't have to teach him, you would put one of your own people qualified to teach him. So we start putting different people with different uniforms, different books, but from the same dojo. What we would call a dojo, would well, when you come from Akron, and you have to read and writing arithmetic, when you go someplace, and the guys are arithmetic teacher over here, and the guys over there, you don't consider you being the same dojo over here. Well, can you understand what I'm saying? Why look if you have one school here, and you have two teachers in the same place? But the teaching methods are different. The Tai Chi teaching method is completely different. The Tai Chi teaching method is teach basic techniques, like pushing and pulling and back, inside and inside. It's the same thing with foot. Put out. How about this kind of teach that? Then you teach 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You teach that. So now, then that completes a 6-week course. Because by the time you're at, then you're into the Tai Chi and the basic 1 to 1 to 11. So in a 6-week Tai Chi course, of course, everybody just lines up and does that. But prior to that, you're going to have the guy just 1, 2, 3, the basic copy pattern, pushing down and coming back home. Think that for the order, push forward this way. Push forward this 1, 2, 3, 4. So the pattern can be expanded to fit the instructional necessities. For everybody else, just line up like out there and do it. But of course, remember the university is interested in like just doing it. They're interested in somebody got some kind of syllabus. Is that true? Now, just making some notes. One of the problems we have in we have senior instructors, they come late and do another thing. That the guy says, I heard somebody's wife say, well, he's not going to do it unless there's some future. And I thought to myself, boy, that's really wrong. That means that he has to see the future. When you're a little child, you see the future that your parents see. Who saw the future? Your parents or you? Okay, because they saw a future God. Is that right? How do you convince people of God of something which you don't really knowledge? So right now, if you get something really small, you have no knowledge of what it is, you know how to throw it away. You don't know that later it's going to be extremely valuable. You guys are training beginners, as some more. You may be the greatest karate master in the world. You may be coming up. You may be the big guru, your leader, the really person who can do something for society. You don't know. You ladies sitting there, you think you're you don't know how it's going to be. And the great masters, you think you're up here running gyms. You may not be the great masters. You may be just the fathers of growing children. You don't know that. And you don't know what the value is for 10, 15, 20 years from now. See, I know guys that do all kinds of guys go into weightlift and do all kinds of things. You guys put it down 5 years ago. You guys have been trained for 5, 10, 20, 30 years. You sit there for 50 black belt. Those guys sit there fat with bad legs. They do. Do a bunch of weightlifters 20 years later. Sit there fat with they're all a bunch of problems. Not all, that's a generalization, understand. But they really doesn't do them any good. You ever see these women out there running on Sunday morning that keep swimming trim? 20 years later, they're not swimming trim, you are. And you have a black belt and all these things. See, the ability to value things that you bring about you reach very little. Like the ability to we've introduced now, we tied in this karate value after what you have on the to exclude the intrusion. That's going to assume normal value, actually normal value. And in that light, I was asked my teachers, I've been quite a work with them all the time. And I'm the only man who's ever this, that, and the other thing in martial arts. And so the people who are really important to this set me up on this because they knew I could accomplish it. So what we've accomplished here will be reflected around the world almost immediately in every place. Every place. It's like a jujitsu gets bang. So this is the start of the movement where the tradition, the old martial arts, changed by tradition, by the traditional era, old martial arts. This is the movement that they decided to turn to the roots and to expand their practice and capture their own areas. We're not going to decide to be Kage, Mr. Parks, and all these people, real Mr. Suzuki, Dr. Soul, all these people decided that because of their narrow application, because they refuse to expand, because they, again, sat too much in their own living room, read the same books, watched the same thing, that the really broader picture they had all the sharecroppers on all parts of their territory. And they said, Mr. Anderson, if you go take these sharecroppers and move them all, reclaim the territory. I said, gee, I can't do that. He said, yes, you can. Here's how you do it. I said, okay. Now, this is the start of this we've done. This area, now we move the sharecroppers off our territory. They're now in their territory. But for you to completely understand that is called cognitive restructuring. For you to completely understand the Tai Chi is our field, to do it, just like when I finally got it into your heads, and I mean that with some depth for some that lead to judo wasn't the thing that jujitsu was. Because jujitsu was directly to judo. Actually, it's judo. When I put that in place, it finally caught your brains, and now when somebody comes in, you talk in a completely different language. You don't talk about judo, and maybe you don't even address jujitsu. You just talk in general terms like it's a foregone conclusion that every well-trained person does this. And so you have jujitsu classes. And as a matter of fact, you give jujitsu seminars all over. So do you. You guys give jujitsu seminars everywhere. The jujitsu people no less. I've given jujitsu seminars to jujitsu people in Europe when all things are world champions and everything. And the guys got down, they all bowed and said, oh my God, I've never seen anything like that. You were there. So we've now reclaimed our territory. And this cognitive restructuring means that when you think of things now, you don't have to say, well, you're assuming something. You say, I am. Right? That's exactly it. Now, to do this, we have to frame a conceptual framework. And the conceptual framework we said a long time ago with the movement karate, because the very first thing that I did when they rewrote the rules was to set a conceptual framework. One of the parts of the framework was get what you earn. That was the rule structure of that. We heard that a long time ago. That was one of the basics, right? And another part was the referee not being observed in the match. The referee is just simply to observe the work of what? The referee is not supposed to run the match, stop and serve, stuff like that. We put several of those things in place, all principles. Okay? Our conceptual framework of the martial arts for us is real simple. And we put what we want to in place by using what we call standards. You have in your book, you have one steps. And to see like those one step techniques in the book are 8 categories of technique, which I selected 4 representational techniques. And I selected them, sure, but I passed them in front of other people. What's the meaning? I had other people much better than myself look at those and agree and make some changes. So when you guys go ahead and make those changes, you're flying in the face with 4 or 5 degree black belts that agree with me. And when you're narrow shot at that point, you were deciding not to do it. Because you don't know what they're supposed to do because it hasn't done it for you yet. That's the problem, see? Now, this idea of putting the standards in place, you do these over and over again, and they inculcate or internalize the values that those standards are supposed to put. That's also like one of Winston Churchill's. But in any event, what we're going to do is have both series standards and put this stuff aside. When you're down here, you pick the mats, you go out there and you push out, and you go back here and you do kata, and do something else, and you say, well, why aren't we testing the student? It isn't a question of test. The idea of a written test is a curse. Because a written test is only the indicators, is it not? And then the indicators themselves become the standards. They say, the word is they say, things on the test assume more value than things are off the test. But we know that the indicators in a form of a written test become standards. That's okay for a word like factoid. A word like delimitation, that's okay, because the standard there is called delimitation. And they don't go beyond it. But the indicators become the standards. They control the system and change the conceptual framework that we want. You see. So when we guys are doing these techniques, we don't look at bridging on to build in the technique. We look for the hidden clues. When you jump in here, you land on your heels. You land on your toes. If you land on your toes, which foot you landing on? And when you jump, your elbows leave the gates. When you jump, does your mouth open? You blink. When you're out there and you're pushing on down, you push down to the technique. You know, you step out far, step out short, you go down, and you go out. And your head go forward, your head come back. We're not saying what's wrong, what's right to you now, because we don't want that. We want to look and see what you're doing, so we know you get it wrong. When you're doing it wrong, we'll change the situation. We're not going to tell you it's wrong. We're just going to change the drills so it's just right. You understand? See, when your mother fed you carrots, she sometimes said that's good for you, but she never really told you exactly why. So we're going to do something very similar to that. We're going to change things. We're not going to tell them why. And when the guy's going over here in the Nakata, the guy comes out in the Nakata, he's not doing it right. We don't care about doing it right there. The right has value in the Nakata competition. It has a value. That's something entirely different. We're looking for this entire range of movement, and the indicators become very important. Now, these indicators, as I said, let us look at whether the standards are functioning. But this whole thing actually is composed of three areas of inspection. One is the geniform, which means we look at the body system generally. We look how the body works, we look how the body uses. And we look at it differently for different people. It's not the same thing. The way the muscles contract, the way the body functions, the way the feet hold the floor, and everything like that. And we can never expect somebody to do something that their body can't do. For example, we're really convinced they don't got out of cut stretch. That can't be part of their standards or their indicator. That has to be improved because of that. And some people, when they're doing advanced kata, they don't have to do high cycle. They can do this. They shouldn't be denied the kata because of limitation technique. And it's not a limit technique. If you can't do a good cycle, that's not limit. And you've been taught to do it, and you still can't. That doesn't mean your technique is bad. That means just simply that technique's not for you. You know? Like when we had a chance to shoot the guy with a pistol throwing a rock, some guys can hit him with a rock, and other guys can't hit him with a pistol, you know? You know that, you know? Like if I were to stand 50 foot away and give a guy a 45 and another guy has a baseball pitcher of a baseball, the chances are you get killed with a baseball, not with a 45. 45 would probably go up this way, and decided to walk out the barn door. So you guys know what the shot, you know what I'm talking about, right? Is that right? Like, the guy goes over here and says, so there's some weapons that for some people, they just don't work for others, and there's no way you would. Then, we have, so the body is really interesting, and we have a thing, we've coined a new word this week, and I put it in play, we call it pitching therapy, is that correct? And we know that a lot of people sitting on the floor like this doesn't function well. They're better off pitching. A lot of autistic people, and a lot of ADD people like ADH or ADD, whatever they are, they have that problem, like I have experienced. Those people jump into musicians, the violin, pianists, and the Albert Einsteins. Well, I'm not an Einstein. He used to get up and go expert violinists too. They get up and pitch with a violin, they pitch with a piano, they pitch with all kinds of things. And there's no, you're not to be blamed. If you can't sit still, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We provide a way for you to sit still for a limited period of time. You can't sit still, it doesn't matter. What really matters is that you can function at the highest level of ability. The very highest level of ability. And it's key, so you can see that. So this metaform is important. And for some people, the pitching therapy is really important. And Carl reminded me they use that for some types of discipline action. Where they don't sit them down, get them up. for actually physics is quite necessary for speed. You can stand there like this and talk, and after about 5 minutes, you listen to it. In the fidgeting, they allow messages. And if you don't think so, you're talking to a dog. Once a dog fidgets the wrong way, you better get out of there. And he gave, I was sure back he gave me a trip that was a book, film actually, on a dog catcher. Animals. And I can tell you, if you got you black belts that haven't seen that, are really missing something because of dealing with animals who want to bite you. Major. It's not my fault. We're doing this too. And of course, you guys all know that, right? I mean, you guy comes in there and beats you, punches you, right? And some fool comes in there and gets after your ankle. What are you going to do? It's a shame to have a front guy run away from the fool, fight the great big guy. And Bob Mann, I should make a comment. One thing about the dog I know, you never, anything that has what to do with the sniffers. You know, dogs that like to sniff, you never know what to do with the dogs that like to sniff. On the internet, you said that an elevator midget has a different point of view. So, getting back to the next. The schema form is a slip. And see, so that's the first one we do. The second one we deal with the way you perceive things, whether your ability to recognize patterns. And within the movement, you can't see the patterns. The patterns exist in thoughts and within everything else. And so what happens when you look at something, as we said before, you get the first step, you just turn into like a little fact that is unsubstantiated yet. And then it go down, which triggers sort of like search in the schema base for something which you prefer. It tries to connect with something. If you can't connect with something, then it really it creates its own pattern, affects the wrong thing. And these schema patterns are really seen. They're physical in some sense. We do in judo because you get a sense of movement. And for us, we can recognize them. We're not quickly enough to do anything. So the judo player actually, the minute you recognize the moves, just like the karate guys, you're pushing like this. Judo people will be pushing. But we have to think of that. Judo people look like this. And that's a little bit different. So their pattern or something like that is a little bit different than ours. Also, when you're moving just on the floor, you're moving. And in some sense, when I'm watching people, and I see a grab like this, he just immediately it strikes me so. He strikes me just terrible. Because when he pulls back, a finger snap. I'm doing this one, he pulls up, and he pulls up. And that's that little thing that you can see. So I see a guy, I feel like grabbing me wrong, then I go, his fingers, and he breaks his fingers. And this finger here was broken. Well, the back guy back his neck was spun out on him. And his name is Bill Bing, actually. It was the same thing. But I broke my fingers, and I should make both hands. I had that finger ever since. You really got to be careful of that. So the recognition of patterns of floor movement, where we had the back and forth, jump, twist, neck. And we were out in San Diego, and the United States team was just absolutely decimated. Our guy that won the second in the World Games, Dale Beam, was just going live and beat everybody. And so then Mike Dunn came up. And Bobby kind of he beat the guy went from 5 to 2 or something like that. And immediately, because he'd been training only with those patterns. His wife went down to San Domingo. She was scared to death. She went through so she got out there, fast. She would love that. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So those patterns are really important. But those patterns, you don't do them because you can't. And because you can't, you don't even try to learn to do it. An orangutan would do it. But you guys don't do it because they give you a little bit of trouble. And when they give you a little bit of trouble, you put them on the back burner so they never practice. The same thing as some of the karate. If you don't have a shooting on whacking with a stick, you're not going to do it. Tai Chi, everybody never gives anybody trouble. But you put a couple of foot patterns in the middle of Tai Chi and everybody will quit. Really, you have a Tai Chi program, you put some shuffle patterns in the Tai Chi, and everybody quits. No more Tai Chi. Why? Simple. You go down to women's rowing class down here at the Joe Park Center or something like that, and women are doing it. Not Blake and I, fine, all these old ladies. My wife, 7 years old, went out there doing an hour. My wife, almost 7 years old, got out there boom for an hour. She'll go for an hour on that stuff. I bet today when we do it for 10 minutes, you guys all die. My wife can do more than you can. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Because you try to inject into it something that's not there. pick a brain cluster for a schema pattern. She just doesn't. She doesn't have anything to attach to, so it doesn't attach to it. You attach it to this, and this. One thing you attach it to is work and trouble. Work and trouble. Those two things you attach it to. Right? It's like a guy when you're really doing front kicks. And I think with 100 front kicks, you do each one so that you're going to last at the end of 100. You see? But at the beginner, if nothing kicks real hard and dies, it's just like this, you see? Isn't that what happens? And so when we start to bump up, you say, oh, it's going to be a hard workout. I better pace myself. And so you start pulling back from it, pace, and in doing so, you lose the flow. So that's the schema. Trying to recognize things within the pattern. And when I'm talking, he's trying to say, where's it going with this? Where's it going with this? And if you find out that we prefer those anchovies or strawberry ice cream, then it makes you giggle. That's what makes people laugh. When people laugh, they always look, I got Brian, he laugh like this. The guys turn each other laugh like this. And you find what we do. When they think we should be, people always turn to the person and go, hee. And they both laugh, and the other person goes, hee, back, and they turn their back. It's really funny how that works. It's true. It's actually true. So the schema is a really complex thing dealing with a lot of stuff. And the last little thing we want to talk about is the way we remember things, the way things are passed on by memory. You could say, we're talking about a meme, which is a little piece of memory that's in fact, almost biologically replicated. In the sense that we use the biological body to replicate it, we do the biological body. It's a product of that. But it's a piece of memory. And it's like a rumor. When Joe A tells B, B tells C, C tells D, goes all the way around the rumor. By the time these three ends, it's not the same thing, right? You know, it's like the old historical pattern. About the fourth generation, everybody had three uncles that came over. One went to New York, one went to Texas, and the other went to California. And it's that kind of like the thing with you guys in your background, that you have family trees. And so we have this great deal of replication taking place. I do a product, you watch me do the product, you Roger doing teaching like me today, right? Working with us. So you're replicating the mimic. And the original recognition patterns, things were correct. And you didn't have the body base, you hadn't been able to do it to support it. You know, like teaching swimming without ever having swum and that kind of thing. So without that base to support it, it might be completely changed. And particularly if people pick it up, augmenting your. So every student is 80% of his teacher. It doesn't take very long. You're down to, you got maybe 5% there, the last guy. So you're going to intuitively pick it up because you can pick up the newspapers, read, pick up the funny books, or the equivalent of a funny book, Black Butt Magazine, you can pick that up. and look at it. So I guess, you know. That's why guys pick this stuff up. And the guy that can remember is considered really great. Like there's no question, where's Michael Bell? The great memory in the form. Man, I've never seen a better memory. The guy can he can do any kind of comedy he has in 5 minutes. Then but he knows perfectly well that he can't really teach that well. Because the subtle points he may or may not have seen. May or may not have got it, isn't that right? May or may not be there. See? So what we try to do is make sure that all those things are in place so that you understand it and you pass it on. Then instead of being, when two of you come together, instead of being 80% of 80% of 80%, you start being 100, 120, 140. Like I'm right now, I think probably 120, 130% of my teachers work. Because of the ability reaction or reinforcement. That's the way we have all the scientific things forward. Everybody stood on somebody else's shoulder for a new perspective. Say, we can only go a wall this high. I can only go this high. But if I'm standing here, and he can stand on my shoulders, he can go a bit higher. And we can keep one another. You stand on his shoulder, keep getting higher. You understand? Keep the platform higher, the platform higher, we can see. So it's really important for us to be able to utilize other people's knowledge. And in this case, this isn't my knowledge. This is knowledge that's come before me that I've assembled through order, through request, at a great deal of work. Now this stuff here is almost like a momentous change within the martial arts. Because the karate people, huge groups, more power, could get more power. And they go, hee, I guess because I was literally from Newfoundland, you know? And he said, never seen a car like that. So this, I was really working at this a long time. And so we're not the narrow shortcut. We're not the narrow shortcut at all. We're really broad-based. Our heritage is enormous. And I've been fortunate to surround myself with people that can absorb this. Because they in turn have a broad base. You take anybody, I mean, Mike here, Mike's been with me in Rotterdam, he's been the world jiu-jitsu league, president of jiu-jitsu, all kinds of stuff. He did across my company. World competitor in about everything, right? Jiu-jitsu, everything. World competitor, Pan-American champion, whatever. Brian's been with me in Australia and Panama and everywhere, isn't that right? He's a great master in Australia, which is it? Boy, that's a great master's word, you know. So the thing is that, so you think, oh boy, Anderson's a pretty good guy, but my teacher is better. And the guys at Suzuki go, oh boy, I mean, these guys are fantastic. This guy jumps up, runs along, boom, 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 boom. 6 balloons kicks in front of the comes down, covers about 15 flips, launches himself into a balloon like that. Guys hold things up in the air, jump up, do a flip, and kick 3 balloons, come to the right boards, or over, back and on their feet. These guys are really fantastic, lovely guys. I mean, just superb. Watch him move, incredible. I mean, Mr. Che over there, for all he does, Mr. Che was climbing with his kicks and speed. Isn't that right? Oh, boy, you couldn't believe his speed. Unbelievable. And this is our stuff, see? So I'm a representative of that group. And so when you go someplace, you may be nobody into martial arts, go down and sit down, but you're not, no matter who you are. You're maybe a Shihan of a Kwanmukan. And they look at you and say, uh-oh, there's this guy. Well, who are you with, Mr. Anderson? Uh-oh. We've had people go to Greece, Europe, everywhere, all over the world, and they go there and they say, who are you with, Mr. Anderson? They say, uh-oh. Would you like to teach a class or something? That's really what they do. And this is, went up a huge group of food quantities. You know, first you can do the techniques of panic. See? I had on tape when he was winning the Pan American. They said, who's still the tennis? Mr. Anderson, oh, that's just like that. Because I've always represented a broader group, which I'm really tickled to death. I'm a junior so much, and I'm really tickled to be there. It did my fault. My teachers died. I mean, the members died. They're all died up here. It's not the result, But I'm going to be doing some time. You guys are sitting here. You're going to be the ones. So you gain enormous presence. Because when you sit there, you're a Shihan of the fun. You're not one Dale McCutcheon's karate teachers. There's a difference. And so we come together for training. We come together for this. And we have an enormous group. Our group is so large, you couldn't even budget it here. You couldn't get it in. But we come, the ones that do come are a special group. Those other people, they learn by passion. Many people. That's okay. Certainly okay. But the danger is that they start thinking that their knowledge is definitive. And it's like you can own the library, which you do. Right? You go down to the library and take out books. So when they want to do something, you have to go to you. You're their source. Now, it's impossible for a teacher to do well without being able to get funding. If you have 5 of them, you can do better than there's 1 of you, right? All you see now should be trying to create 5 more of you. All those people involved with it should realize that the book should never be developed as all the body is in Memphis degree. They want to go on a nice walk in your big short coat, they want to go play baseball, your finger hurts or something like that. So the body's going to always cooperate all the time. But for the Shihan, he wants to have many parts of it. And you black belts are individual. You're part of the Shihan. You're just like a body. And this part of his knowledge works back and forth. And many young people today, particularly not my argument, not here, but many of the other people say, look, I want it now. And the answer is simple, it's not your time. It's like when you enter Harvard, you guys, the very first freshman, you never had the nerve to request a degree at that level. He waits further for the degree. Then he waits further for the master's. He waits further for the doctorate. So this idea that the Shihan is the body, and all the black belts are part of that body. Part of the said, look, I'd like to be your brother or a cousin or something. I said, we would do that. I said, but we have to understand really what we are in the learning process here. It is not possible to learn by attachment theory. This requires that you yourself get in. It is really critical. If I walk around the floor, my bare feet with all big calluses over a period of time, you, by washing, will not develop strong feet. You will not do it. You can't develop those calluses by washing. And then since those calluses make it impossible to walk over a hot coal, because you watch, you can't walk over a hot coal. And if those techniques I've done enable me to do some fantastic things, if you're copying those, you've copied the demonstration. A demonstration, you haven't copied the application at all. That's what I showed you last night with the knife. When you guys can teach knife control, you can't. Give me an application piece, give me your techniques. But if you're good, I can undercut me piece because I know how. This is what we have to do. Together we can proceed it, but we can't do it all one time. One go, one two, and in some sense. And it takes you so many years, I just can't teach it all the time. But we come in here, but there's a thing we do. See, one thing I really want to do this seminar, we're going to do some tomahawk. Hey, don't kid yourself, that's wonderful. You don't have a tomahawk, you can throw plates or knives or rocks or all kinds of it. Tomahawk throwing is really fun. Man, that is fun to really have a blast with that, you know? And then, of course, the guys who are throwing tomahawks, you guys get some guys back in the guns and try to tomahawks out of the air when they're moving through the air. See? We have a lot of fun with that stuff. And, you know, we used to do that in here. We had the nationals. We had a shot put. We had an indoor shot put. We had a shot put in here. We had rope climb. And we had a tomahawk throw stuff in here. We had the USAPF nationals. That was the draft. You remember the draft? Something like that was. You guys who did throw the shot put, let ropes do jump throughs. All that. We just didn't have the t-shirt contest. You know, that was the start of the paint gun stuff. A lot of people okay, so this is the species. We have a geniform and meniform scheme which constitute conceptual framework, which is internalized by the standard and inspected by the indicators, which we call a cognitive restructure. This allows you in your mind to develop what we call virtual framework, virtual reality, which then supports all these things. We introduced a new word called picture. Which is what some of you are doing right now. I don't know if it's therapy, but it's okay. Now, before we get down to focus on this, and we have a question. We have an addition to the manual. It's a working edition, but there'll be a firm edition, printed edition, the biggest one we have now, but this is a sample page that has the pictures. And actually, I was working on it this morning. It was just too much for us to print out yet, and I wasn't sure in the explanation how it would come out. And it's plenty to you. I saw some things that I wanted to rewrite because they weren't, I knew what I wanted to say, but when I started saying it, I realized I didn't understand what it meant. That's true. Makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, put your books aside. Sure, now we go in the right direction. Okay, let's start off with that. How should start to the right? Okay, so start to the right. Yes. Yeah, how many of you guys instead of leaving, concentrate on the other? You might call this the third effort, right? Let's solve it like that. Let's solve it on this one. Okay, ready? Hit. Deep, not big, hit. Deep, not big, hit. Deep, not big, hit. Deep, not big, not big, Pitch, knee, con, dig, 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 pitch, knee, con, dig. Isn't that fun? That's good. You can do it all the time. One count for the other. But these are patterns. These were given me by pastor, Grandmaster So, the Goshen Master, and I wrote it. I said before, Mr. Entire Japanese team rises to the These are the standard code. Have no mission. What happens is we pursue and iron and lots of happen. So these are well done with a group of people. Let me give you an example of guys. See you. Now, and you guys can go over that. Okay, you guys stretch out more. You can kick each other. Two of you fall back, two stay forward. Okay, good. Okay, stop. That's what you do with a kid. Sign on your sit out, talk, let people fall in. Fine. Let them do your money. Warm up, get all out. No, you can't get fine. Let them get fine. Let them go. If you don't drop it, pick it up. That's what's up. Because you can't teach this. There's no way you can tell them what to do. The mind has to do by itself. They have to teach the kid. I come to home, the old savior thing, the father takes his kid out on the lake and drops him in, says, "Where's the right foot up. You see the kick of that. I'm going to split the kick again. Again, continues. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shoot over. Skip forward. 1, 2. Drop down. Come up. 1, 2, strike in the same direction. Turn. Double shift. Step forward. One, up. One. Big extension. Hold on. And I extend. And punch. Right to the left foot in place. Turn with the foot back. Turn on that foot. Middle of hand. Over and bring your foot back. Foot front of you. Foot back. Drop through the wall. Coming up. Hand here. Hands out. Step back. Good. Now this one has 3 parts. Two variety and two legal. The singular variety is done by the new writing. That variety and the secondary variety. That is not the coordination. So you come back to not. Okay, you back there, Michael. Okay. Okay, close your eyes. There. Bob first. Up. Not that. We're just on together. Turn. Drop. Then the kick. Push. Back fingers. Thrust. Back up. Lift. Down. Back up. Lift. Down. Place your right hand. There. Left foot. Off kick. 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 3. Punch, punch. Back up. 1, 2, 3. Shudo 1. I shudo 2. Skip. Left front kick. Coming down into a deep X stop. Rise up and take. Stagger step back. Right hand. Strike. Strike. Turn. 2-hand placement. Step forward. Nice hand. Put down. Punch, punch. Okay. Pull really deep behind the punch. Drop into that. Drop into that. Okay, now I'd like to say something before you go further. I don't feel your stances are low enough. When they're high, they're high, and they're low, they're low on this floor. Let me give you an idea again about pattern, about the conceptual framework. Total release. this form is similar. Some parts of this form lead, and other parts of the form contract. And if you do them not clearly with the vertical dynamics, you lose that ability to lead, and that part contract. The leading parts are those parts that lose the flow of water. The trapping parts are those who lose the rock in the middle of the stream. Right? Right?
Good way to get dizzy. Mr. Feldman, are you fond of that camera? Oh, okay. I nearly dropped him on it. I nearly dropped him on it.
It's okay.
You want to do this? No, I just see all the other pop guys.
And they're so strong.
It's supposed to be good for you. Why are we all in there?
Okay, now, all this action is so far here. The really powerful action, stream. When you do this, because when you come here, that's what you're doing. You grab the hand here, and you go boom, and drop. Then you turn around. If there's not, double walk. When it comes to go 1, 2, stand being here. Should not be going. This is when I look hard at your back, I grab this down here. I put my hand here. He can't do anything. He's gone. It is not possible for a real little person to have felt a real big person. But for anybody with any strength, they have somebody that's so much, or even smaller, you can send a guy to the end. You really can. So it's like this. See, this is closed by pushing here. You're closing up. And you cut all the loose. Push here, push it on there. That's the difference. When you're using that, you can't help them. That's part of the product that you guys, I haven't done anything yet, but you want to do that. Sure. How many of you see guys have seen it? That's good. You understand? one in the Chunwan era. It was taken to the Shaolin Institute, supposedly by the Master Control, who was then invited to this panel or room or go to Harmon if you want to come to. As I said, we moved the squatters off our land. He said, this is ours. And if they don't like it, we'll fight it. Fight. Because that all in our previous training, all our training, the Hoover developed in a fight everything we are. We fight, they don't. But they want to contest it, we're certainly not going to be that this way because they can't beat us. At all. I can remember old Bob Bohat. Remember when he came into that, Jim, Grandmaster Bohat convention on Pat? Remember Bohat? Now he could be up, he's going to try to make it stand up, Okay, now, the mandatory to go into the first step of Tai Chi. And I want to see that again. I want to look at the training. But remember, Tai Chi elements like this on your lives. So I'm looking forward to it. Figuring out. This form, one of the characteristics of this form is that what kind of a squat? A squatting action. And a lot of people want to repeat that I have a lot of people occasionally squat. Now, like the halfway down the center of the chair.
Hey.
No. Thank you. Okay, sit down. Okay. One more. We've had different people read this at different times, and understand. And right, if you have glasses, read it very loudly, slowly. Okay, read it again. Wait a minute, I'm gonna have to change the lyrics.
Hey!
Real close. Yeah, it's 11:59.
Kwan and China. Legend has it that a great illustrator lived in the Udon Mountains about 800 years ago. Certain master, named Feng, agreed that he was being taught watched by the great emperor Kwan Wu. Upon waking, he started teaching Chinese watches. Chinese National Commission on Conceptual Framework and Kwanmukan, they call it, the legal self-defense was provided by the Chinese philosopher. Kwan
got you? Very well.
Hey.
Jerry? Yeah. Well, you? And, okay, let's just go back. Now, this is the, one group you want to get right? Very good. Is that right? We're in the north. We're in the north. West. Want you there? Now, if you had this diagram, you're in the copy here. And you're in the copy here. You're in the copy here. And you're in the copy here. And you're in the commune here. Jerry, you're in the commune here. And you're in the commune here. Now, you guys have an army machine. Hold on, turn this way. Yeah, go on. Straight out. Side, forward. And you're coming to the thing. Okay. What next? Stand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, back. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, back. Okay, now, start. Now, see how this is? Now, you guys can see your position. Each side. Okay, now, you're going to do that way. One, two, three, 4, 5. One, two, three, 4. One, two, three, 4, 5. Okay, now, do that. Right in there. You're in 45 this way. Okay, you guys are in 40. You're in 45 this way. Go. 8, 5, 8, go. 8. Okay. You're playing this way. Well, you wouldn't do it. You're playing. Yeah. Go. 8, 8, 5, 8, go. 5. Okay. You're in here. You're that way. Okay, go. 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You look towards them. You look towards them. You look around. Okay. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's time to push up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One, two, three, 4, 5. Right again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, this time drop the punch. You can drop 1, 2, 3. Okay? Understand the action? Just drop 1. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hey, good. Contact with the you guys are capable of that today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's all right. Right again. 1. I'm going to take you guys up. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now you're done now. You're going to come out of a back kick, back down. Okay? 1. No. This is real Chinese. 1, 2. 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1. Stop. Hey. Stop. Stop. Now stand up here again. Like you're close. 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 Okay? This is going to be strictly drop, kick, punch. And if you're down, 1. Let's do the drop, kick, 2. Close. Let's not attack. Let's do this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Okay, now, on this end of the count, everybody, All of a sudden, feeling that your group dynamics started emerging. Started being a sensitivity to other patterns without even looking. They started really smoothing out all of a sudden. It is exactly the same way with your own personal body. The same way with your own personal body. Now, this is one of the standard drills. And this is always used in small tatami room. They had a small closed room. And they would all get together back to back, something like this. Maybe there's somebody in the center. The guy in the center would call, and they all start. Now, I'll show you how to work in the center. And you guys down in the original position. Again, bring your hand out. All right? Okay, everybody follow that in. All exercises are now, as a matter of fact, you can all get inside the circle. Right? Get inside the circle. Get smaller. Get close to the circle and get it. Now, it's a pretty small group, right? Longer than the one with the thing. Okay? And follow the name. Now, the reason for the small space is to small space. Large space is not. In here, this is one of the fundamentals of the okay? Please, come back. You got that up? All right. Okay. Now, once it's coming together, up the other.
He started teaching Chinese body. The Chinese National Commission on Tai Chi Chuan, the Kwanmukan, call it but the old name, Tai Chi, says that Tai Chi Chuan probably started 300 years ago in Qin Ji Hua, Quincy County in the Henan province during the Ming or Qing dynasty. Civil difficulties of wars created a need for self-defense, which was provided by this type of Chinese boxing. In Tai Chi Chuan, as in karate, the dynamics vary greatly. Soft and hard, quick and slow, choppy and smooth. As this style of boxing consisted of 8 primary hand postures and 5 major changeable postures, it was initially called 13 forms. It is said that the pattern is seen as endless as the Chang Chi Yangtze River, and so it was also called Chang Quan, long boxing. In the 18th century, a master of martial arts, Wang Zhongwu, a Chinese martial arts master, reformed this boxing and connected it to the Chinese philosophy of yin and yang. He is the man that gave this boxing the formal name of Tai Chi Chuan. In recent years, Tai Chi Chuan has undergone significant changes, becoming relaxed, smooth, and flowing, and the vigorous foot stomping of earlier time has diminished. The art had arrived at the point where it can now be considered as a health exercise, as an exercise for health.
Throwing off this way. Another guy's thinking to take the wrestling off this way. Another guy decided he'd take the karate into the sword work. And they started isolating, taking little pieces of it. So Aikido was a piece of this big pie that came down for us for thousands of years. It's a little hunk of it. The karate, the Wugo karate, is just a little piece of that. Even today, it's going to be smaller and smaller because of the Wugo karate, which is now sport. We have the Taekwondo, which is now sport. We now have the Wushu, which all its fighting characteristics, and so the big part of that's gone. So unless you're a remarkable athlete, those things are beyond you. And if you do those very, very well, that doesn't mean you get any of the values that were inherent in martial arts. See, so you must know what to do. You just can't go out and do any old thing. See, and that's why with your teacher and being so close with you and working with you, you really have some quite excellent students here. But I would like you now to remember the water flows. And I'd like you to move like water flow. I'd like you to smooth yourself, move. And then when you punch, see, when you're starting your techniques, the techniques they're smooth. 1, 2. And then they move. Then the things move for power. See, the guy comes up with the form. He starts to form. And he relaxes with the kata. 1. Then the thing moves long with the kata. And so from this middle, real softness, all of a sudden, bam, bam, bam. That's what comes out. And then you could practice karate for a long time. Be sure it's natural flow. Otherwise, it's hopeless. What you're going to do is put on a gi, come down and get a black belt, and you can be like the people practicing in here. I'm not sure the Aikido club's all right when I know of it. I see most Aikido, everybody realizes non-functional. Because it doesn't include the very important things that we're a part of. And what was more important with Aikido than anything else was sticking people with ice sticks. So Aikido stuck people with pencils and ice picks. That was number one thing. The old Aikido, they spent hour after hour figuring out how to put people in the ice. But of course, they don't teach that. You couldn't teach it here at the university, could you? It'd be a curious liability. Okay, that's all. I'm going to, it's time for us to go. So why don't you guys get in here, and before I go, I always measure a class, I got to have 4 good questions. So come forward and ask me 4 good questions. Somebody ask me a question. Some complicated question. Yes.
You mentioned that what we perceive in our brain is actually a virtual reality. Is there a reality out there that we are not perceiving?
The reality is out there you can't perceive. That's why they got the implicit and explicit orders. One is the order of atomic physics, where things exist because they're in opposition to something else, usually in opposition to measurement. That's for example, that's the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You measure something, you give it existence. And so, when a little child, they reach out and touch something, and the signals crackle up and down their nerves. And they have to spend a long time, the human being does, in interpreting what those signals mean. And from those signals, the brain then interprets a reality. The idea that we can understand what's, that something like there's no beginning and no end. We always have this causative thing. We think there's a beginning to something, there's an end. We think that's mandatory to be something like that. And for example, the atomic physics in causation shows clearly that the future is already here. You can't have past and present without having future. Impossible. So the fact is that we have the idea of predestination that sort of confounds the reality that we would have. Doesn't it? But in atomic physics, that's really what you have. You see, in quantum physics. So we have to understand that our ability to grasp the important things of what was before we were born, what happens after we die, is there really so there's a Big Bang, but what caused the Big Bang? What was before the Big Bang? See, that's the question. Maybe nothing. But we have this is our paradigm. So the reality, no, there probably is not a specific reality. The reality is one that we have created, and our tools for measurement are exactly those that fit the thing that we've created. We've both created with our instruments, and the instruments are created by the environment, sort of like something created by measurement type of thing. So this is just one type of reality. Let me give you another example. We have a length, width, and breadth of 4 dimensions, aren't they? 3, and time is the 4th. And if you were to put a 5th dimension in there, you could put something like mass, speed, something inside that, which would affect mass and affect time. Width, that would be another one. And then if you put the whole, or if you just take the 4 of them and put them in dynamic flux, for example, it was a jelly, or like jelly, and you shake it like that, and all vibrated, then you would induce another dimension, wouldn't you? So where would you find your reality in that? How could you find a reality in that? So if you say that that our sphere that we live in is always in dynamic flux, that's the problem. So that's the reason for all the quantum theories is predictability. And the first thing is the chaos theories. No, there is no actual reality. No. We create our own reality, and what's really important for people to do is make sure that within society, within a group, we possess the same reality. Within that group, we share the same aberrations, we have the same mind. So within this society here, we all share that sense in common, that common sense that we would call the reality for this area. I think that's the first thing. We have this fantastic hubris that we're so important. Really, we're such a... As a matter of fact, the argument has been posed many, many times to God, that God made everything. And maybe God just made people. Maybe He didn't make a big nebula out there. How do we know? And how would you know? And did God make all the nebula? Or maybe He just made us. See, but the fact that we have opinions on that type of thing creates a form of reality, doesn't it? And everybody does have opinions on that. Churches have opinions. We have opinions. And I'm not belittling the opinions in any form, but I'm just saying that's the type of thing where reality sometimes confounds reality. Yes, I'm looking for another question. Yes?
Does the MEM take paradigms that we're used to and modify them, make them into new paradigms?
In a meme? You mean a meme?
Yes.
Yeah. The meme actually is just information, but the meme could be anything. The meme is generally considered a bit of information, like almost a byte, a computer byte. A meme is a small piece of information, but actually it's not. It's also the piece of information, the loop of information in the entire thing. For an entire book would be a meme. A paradigm would be a meme, absolutely. A paradigm is a meme. But paradigms are pretty much set by the patterns. A paradigm is a pattern that's pretty much set in the schema. You see. And you can adjust it just like running a scratch down the wall. And when you run a pencil down it, you can't get the pencil out of the scratch. And that's sort of like, like when you're scratching. That's sort of like what happens when you have a maladaptive schema. Then when information comes in, it sort of tracks down that scratch and can't get anywhere else. And they call that correctly perceptual rigidity. And perceptual rigidity is a paradigm, because it'd be a paradigm in favor of truth, and it could also be a maladaptive paradigm. Either way, couldn't it?
Yes.
See, that's the thing. Yes. Yes.
As far as the genital massacre between males and females and the differences in thinking, how does that apply to perhaps differences in how people perceive karate?
Well, it's quite interesting, because guys would just fight, and women like to know what they're fighting about and understand it. See, women analyze fighting in a completely different way than men do. Men, when the adrenaline comes up, just get out there and like to wrestle, and they just get caught up in the heat of the moment and whack away. It's adrenaline, and that shuts down that bicameral brain, if you're thinking, and the intuitive part that analyzes things closes down. But the women, it never really closes it down. A man, when he sees a tiger, and the old men, he'd pick up a sword and think, oh, or a spear, I'm going to go get her. Women grab the kids and run. The women always grab the kids. Men never worry about the kids. Men go to the fight, the women grab the kids. So the women in natural things think it doesn't mean that they're any less. That doesn't mean that they're less. They respond in a different way.
Is it possible then that by analyzing the situation, it could give us an advantage?
Yes, it's entirely possible. But the problem is, you see, that is sometimes a real fighting situation, war situations have to be overly simplified. Otherwise, men can't kill. We just have to charge right in and kill the people. We can't start thinking about their families and their kids, and we see a little kid in the battlefield and they shoot him too, you know? That's what the men did in Vietnam. I mean, they have developed that real hardness from that action. Where the women, not that way, so much. Now remember, this is the, what you call fallacy of grouping. You can't say women and you can't say men. Because women and men, by a group, aren't alone. They sort of loop together. But you say the great mass of the women and the great mass of the men. You understand? Because you can't, there's a lot of errors. Fallacious grouping is one of the really classic things, like the guy says Aikido, and you say, define Aikido. Like many people have asked me, what's the difference between karate and Taekwondo? Ask me.
What's the difference between karate and
Well, essentially the same thing, except in the Wuko karate, the stance is a little more deep, and they punch a little more to support. In the Taekwondo, the stance is a little more fluid, a little higher, and they kick a little more to support. Essentially the same. So yes, they were asking what Kung Fu is.
what's Kung Fu?
Generic term for martial arts. Yes.
Tai Chi Chuan seems to be very popular right now, especially with the elderly population. Do you think that in the senior groups and things like that, do you think that that's a good thing for, for instance, my father-in-law?
Well, that's a really interesting question, and that has a little preface to that. You do push-outs and sit-outs in here, and in the real Tai Chi forms, all of them, pushing, being able to go completely forward, down to the floor, is more important than going completely back, down to the floor. But being able to push completely forward is absolutely necessary for the forms. And for the very elaborate kata, like the Yang system, you should be able to sit up, which most people do without any problem. So our people in here don't have any problem with the forms. However, if you go among the older people, they can't do that. So then by definition, the older people don't do Tai Chi Chuan. What they really do are a series of exercises that the instructors have put together that resemble Tai Chi Chuan. And Tai Chi, of course, is a religion. It is Taoism under Lao Tzu, and has absolutely nothing to do with any martial arts. But they just shorten the name. But Tai Chi Chuan, then, is very, very difficult to do. We do it here quite well. You don't have any trouble with it whatsoever, except that you remember to keep lower, right? Push out and sit up, push out and sit up. Right? And but you can do that. But in the nursing homes and the older people, the older people really like to do that. Little kids. I mean, I can take a group of my wife's Alcoholics Anonymous party and go out there and say, okay, let's go do Tai Chi. And I go out in the backyard and everybody goes. Everybody. Kids, old people, everybody. But I don't do the push-ups and I don't do the things that are really hard. And they go home and did Tai Chi. But they didn't do, they're like a guy coming in here and everybody can do Heian One, right? You know? And they says, I do karate, I do Heian One. And everybody says, yeah, well, that's good. And they know perfectly well that if you do Heian One for 25 years, that's not a Shodan. Isn't that true? There's more. You see, so it's that case. Yeah, Tai Chi Chuan is really interesting because everybody can do it, and we do it too. I'm teaching it now because I really didn't want to do it because for a long while, because I was moving around the world too much and doing many things. You see, we have Aikido, Jiu-Jitsu, Karate, Taekwondo, and we have Judo, and then now we have Tai Chi Chuan. But I've always done this stuff here I've done since, I have a Tai Chi Chuan card from 1959, 1960. Because you enjoy it, don't you?
Oh, I don't take, my father-in-law does.
Well, we just got done doing it.
Oh.
What do you think that was? That's really Tai Chi. That's really Chuan. Those are Kwanmu. It's Kwanmu 5. The Tai Chi people, it's like to say that all you could do would be Kwanku Dai. And nobody would teach you the other forms. See, we do the Kwanmu forms. Nobody knows those. Well, not a lot of people know that. Just like if all the one form anybody's ever done is Chung Kwan. That's the granddaddy of all the kata. Who does it? Do you know anybody that does Chung Kwan? I didn't even teach it. I wasn't allowed to teach it. Yet every great master in the Western Hemisphere does Chung Kwan. The great masters, everybody. But they don't teach it. Because they figure that the old saying goes from Christianity or the Bible, wherever it is, cast your pearls before swine and they'll devour them and turn to devour you. And so the people really don't, there's really tricky stuff to teach these really elaborate stuff to the students because they leave their mind to total independence. The Tai Chi is just really fun to do. You should always do the forms that we're doing once or twice in class. But if you had to do nothing but that, then you do it once or twice and then you You really wouldn't do it. Karate athletes are much different. It might be like, if you will, to going to a driving range, driving golf balls, and then playing golf. Playing golf is like really karate. Driving at a driving range is like some of the patent Tai Chi, the real low-level Tai Chi. Any karate person properly trained, Jiu-Jitsu is not a problem. Tai Chi is not a problem. It's a piece of cake. It's nothing but one big form. There's 5 major forms. And then there's about 14 Kwanmus. In the 40 hands, actually, 5 techniques and 8 variations, which they call 13, that we identify as 40 hands. That's what there is. This stuff is really sophisticated, though. This karate is really sophisticated, tremendously sophisticated. Okay, one more question. We got to go. Pick up a good one. See, to sort you like your obligations of black belts and brown belts, I think of a good question. Because it's really sitting here, and if you got to tell me what you don't know, you got to identify. Yeah.
You stated in your lecture that our mind is trained not to learn, not to bring in new concepts.
That's exactly right.
Then how do we progress? How do we reach a different virtual reality in the future?
Well, that's extraordinarily interesting. Let's say when you say minds, that's again one of those group generalizations that's not really true. Our civilization as a culture always works to the lowest level. And it works to the lowest level. There's 4 things that we always ask people, right? We ask them what a binomial is. And you guys know all this stuff, right? I ask them what a binomial is, and I could answer that by saying, what else could it be? And we ask them where white paint for the streets come from. And we'd ask them where asphalt comes from. And we ask them what habeas corpus is. And you see, these people, like habeas corpus, are really programmed not to learn that, aren't we? See, the mind, what we do, what we really want is a society where everybody fits. Everybody has a job. Everybody has a family. They bring up the grandkids well. And whatever church they go to supports that. And we have an orderly society, in which the process is much more important than any result. Process of society. In other words, as a lawyer, you certainly know that the justice doesn't lie in the result. It lies in the process being correct. And even if it gives a bad result, it's better to have the process correct. Now, if you go to that, you look at the process of our education. And when the education is designed to help you get a job, it's not designed to educate you, because educated people don't hold jobs. Because you understand, if you're really educated to the full value of money and the value of wisdom, which would you chase? And everybody knows greed's a wonderful virtue. And I joked before, especially in ancestors. No, but our brains are programmed not to learn because we teach you things at the beginning that eliminate the ability for other things to come in because you really have to dismiss other ideas. And I really hate to say it. There's no way to say it, but a good part of that over these last years has been the Catholic Church. When in Spain, it was a heresy to read or write, and anybody that read or write would be drawn and quartered. And if you did anything like that, they would kill you. For close to 1,000 years in the churches and things, nobody was allowed to read or write. Nobody was allowed to do anything. You would be immediately put to death. The nobles of Spain, and it was just a really treacherous Inquisition grabbing you for read or write. The only people that read or write in those days were the Jewish people. And then they were expelled, and then the whole the learning, the seminaries, and everything else were controlled into that particular belief. That's actually true, and I'm not criticizing anything there. That's just historical. That's why Martin Luther said, everybody has a right to read the Bible, and you can't take people drawn quarter if they want to read the Bible.
And are you suggesting that we know our future, we just haven't discovered it yet?
No, I'm suggesting that in all atomic physics, that the laws of causation state very clearly you can't have a present and past without a future being present simultaneously.
But if we do not learn more than what we already know, then what's the future hold?
Well, see, then the we is the problem. The we. There are people that do know. There are fine minds in society that really know, but they represent about 2, maybe 1% of society. And I would expect very quickly that computers have artificial intelligence overwhelm human mind. I would expect that really quickly. The only thing they're lacking is emotions right now, and as soon as emotions get in place, you're allowed to have real trouble with that.
Well, actually, if you created the computer, it knows nothing more than what you did.
Well, that's not true. That's really not true. You know, my brother's a pretty big computer at TRW down there. And back about 4 or 5 years ago, at the University of California, Berkeley, they started an artificial intelligence thing. And they produced a program that actually lives within the machine that actually can learn and develop itself.
Yeah, but isn't it limited to the human experience? And when I
No,
say
it's
you,
not
I meant,
limited to human experience, it's limited to its experience. Remember, the human experience, the humans don't know what they've experienced. See, everything is possible. Atomic physics is taking place in your hand now. Just the iron thing to the life and death of 7, 8 stars. So you're experiencing in your hand the highest levels of atomic physics right now. And that is your experience, but you don't know. See, the grasping mind can't track that. So I believe that that there's so many things that are changing, and I think within our lifetime you're going to see just tremendous thing. Artificial intelligence is coming on. It's going to come on real heavy, and sooner than you think. Human beings are pretty dumb. Human beings have the ability to connect ideas. It's purely random, but we don't know that. And it's somehow or other, the human brain is hardwired for religion. It's really hardwired for religion. Somehow that's buried in there. And there's a lot of things like that. So people aren't really sure exactly the circumstance. But nonetheless, the learning capacity of people is very, very low. Generally, they can't learn. They can't perceive. They can't look. They can't learn. And I've met people from about every field. And I think that in the United States, there's a very small elite that knows anything, has the ability to think. These guys are all lost in logic, they're lost in analytics, and lost in synthesizing and things like this. They haven't really realized that real, whatever it is, it exists out beyond that point. Like multiple universes and parallel universes and things of this nature, they have a great play in what we're doing. And because we have a certain kind of observation, we create that. For example, we really think that we can't move material with our minds. There's actually other senses in the human body. One thing that the Zen masters argue, they say that you have the 5 senses, but there's actually a 6th sense. That when these senses all work together, the 6th is activated. And the 6th sense is a perceptive sense. It is none of the previous 5. What it is a combination or synergy rising out of the previous 5. Like you put yeast in cake, it gets bigger. Sort of like that. Anyway, it's time to go. Guys. So I'm sure we didn't work out really hard, but I have some interesting discussions, right? So we should bow out. Where do we bow? That way? What do you want to do? We should be out. can say that let me tell you one thing else you understand. A flying fraternity is bigger than any other fraternity in the world. There's never been a king or a ruler of society that didn't practice the martial arts. Never. As a matter of fact, Benjamin Netanyahu was a he was top of us. You know what I'm talking about? Great. Great. I don't know what else good or bad. Neat. Great. 1, 2, 3. Come on! Okay. Come on. This is my daughter. I probably couldn't hear. Great, great. Glad you read it. We have a couple small ones. Oh, good. Yeah, I've never heard of this here. This is from Oh, very good. Thank you. Also, in honor of all you've done for us. Very nice. Gratitude, Auntie Georgie Anderson, you have unselfishly shared your wisdom, knowledge, and vision of the martial arts with us. We can't thank you enough for your generosity and inspiration. We can only attempt to follow the path you have set for us. And I think all of you have an idea of what we're talking about. The knowledge of man exists, which is actually learning this and imparting it to us. A really big thrill for me was having my teacher. I got my first degree black belt in this department, and you understand that his other student, that was President's teacher, and then his other student was the president of the United States Taekwondo, and you guys were really big monkey monks. And it was I can't tell you, he took my certificate and my degree and tore it up and backdated it for 3 years. Very, very senior. So I like that. Did you enjoy it? Very good. Nice guy, right? Absolutely. Okay. I think we were trying to still go over costs of the rank or something to Roadhouse. Anybody want to join us? So quickly, we are supposed to be out by 10, so very quickly, don't change, and we'll see you over there. Okay. Thank you. Well, what I want to do